biblical evidence of the black origins of the Hebrew Israelites. On this channel we strive to reveal and restore historical truths that have been hidden or altered for millennia, for the glory of God, for the salvation of souls, for the respect of truth. This very first issue aims to provide biblical evidence of the black origins of the Hebrew Israelites, who are God's chosen people, the chosen race. Certainly the 12 tribes of Israel were composed exclusively of black people, and it is comforting to note that the Holy Scriptures have explicitly left indelible traces of this historical truth once taboo and controversial. It was with these black Hebrew Israelites that the eternal God in His sovereignty made an everlasting covenant. Today the black identity and heritage of Israel have been usurped. But beyond the racist and imperialist considerations that have falsified historical facts, the biblical evidence we publish will allow you to understand this undeniable truth about the black origins of God's chosen people. It is time to restore the truth. This video is taken from the book entitled, Black is the God of the Bible, published by Edelivro in June 2021. A work by Gabriel Balima of Burkina Faso. Revelation of the black identity of the children of the house of Israel. As Christians, we share intrinsic spiritual values with the Hebrew state. Apart from the fact that they believe in Yahweh, the Elohim of Israel and God of the Bible, Jews deserve credit for preserving Hebrew culture and language. We are grateful for this. However, the undeniable and disturbing truth of the century is that none of them are descendants of the patriarch Jacob. Consequently, they are not Semites, let alone Hebrew Israelites, God's chosen people. Since it is obvious that these white Jews living in Israel, Europe, and the US do not constitute the biblical Israel, the following question seems relevant to me. Who then were these famous Hebrew Israelites who spent 430 years in slavery in Pharaonic Egypt, and who, in order to free themselves, parted the Red Sea and crossed it on dry land under the leadership of Moses? Where are they? The descendants of these great figures of the Bible, who amazed the history of humanity, and who attracted the favor of the Most High God? On May 2, 1879, the Jewish Encyclopedia revealed, the 12 tribes of Israel certainly exist. All that remains to be done is to discover which people represent them. In 1905, the Jewish Encyclopedia, Volume 21, page 249 transcribed, if the 10 tribes of Israel have disappeared, they must exist under different names. Therefore, they must be a people who bear a name other than Jewish. To reveal the identity of the true Jews, we will first examine the biblical genealogy of the peoples born after the flood. You will be surprised to learn that at that time, the people who occupied the vastness of the earth were exclusively black. It was from this Negroid ancestry that Israel, God's chosen people, was born. As surprising as it may seem, following the numerous deportations suffered by Israel for disregarding the laws of the covenant, they were scattered throughout the world. The majority of them are found among the black populations of Africa, the United States, Latin America, the Caribbean, and elsewhere. We will prove this undeniable truth in the following 5 videos. We will provide you with irrefutable biblical evidence, compelling scientific proof based on modern genetics, and astonishing historical and archaeological findings. You will be fascinated. Firstly, here is the relevant biblical testimony. Biblical genealogy of black peoples. After the flood, Noah and his 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, along with their wives, were tasked with repopulating the earth, as it is written. The sons of Noah who came out of the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Ham was the father of Canaan. These were the 3 sons of Noah, and from them came the people who were scattered over the whole earth. Reference: Genesis 9, 18-19. Shem is the father of the Semites, Ham the father of the Hamites, and Japheth the father of the Japhetite. When you carefully examine the genealogy of the descendants of Noah's 2 sons, Shem and Ham, and above all, when you consider the importance of their skin color as described in the Bible, you will be amazed at the multitude of black people who occupied Palestine in biblical times. Due to the duplicity of colonial doctrine and white supremacists, It was difficult to admit that there were black people in the Bible. But after this presentation you will be amazed because you will realize that in reality, there were only black people in the Bible, and that the presence of white people was virtually non-existent. Let us first examine the case of Shem and his descendants. Genealogy of Shem. Noah's first son. The sons of Shem were Elam, Ashur, Arpachshad, Lud and Aram. The descendants of Shem are the Semites. They had black skin. Their opponents are called anti-Semites. The lineage of Shem is a royal and priestly lineage. It was from this lineage that the great figures of the Bible were born, such as Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, Aaron, the Levite priests, Joshua, and the kings David, Solomon, and Hezekiah. Let's talk specifically about the identity of Abraham and his grandson Jacob. When war broke out, Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, and his 3 allies defeated the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah. They plundered their wealth and carried off Abram's nephew Lot and his possessions. Since he was living in Sodom, a man who had escaped came and reported this to Abram the Hebrew. Genesis 14:12-13. It was in this passage that Abraham's identity as a Hebrew was revealed. He was therefore the first Hebrew in the region, certainly, because he spoke and wrote Hebrew. He would have learned the Hebrew language from Noah. For the book of Jasher reveals that he went to the patriarch Noah to learn the laws of the Lord. Abraham is therefore a descendant of Shem and the first biblical Hebrew. All his descendants are therefore Semites and Hebrews. His grandson Jacob, in turn, after wrestling with the angel, received the name Israel as his new identity from God. Jacob thus became the first Israelite. Since he was a descendant of Abraham, he became a Hebrew Israelite and passed on this new identity to his 12 sons, the 12 tribes of Israel. So all the children of the house of Jacob are Hebrew Israelites, God's chosen people, the chosen race. It was from this royal lineage of Hebrew Israelites that Jesus Christ, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, was born, the Son of God according to the genealogy of Genesis 5-29 and Matthew 1. The Zondervan Bible Dictionary states, Ham became the progenitor of the black race, such as the Egyptians, Ethiopians, Libyans, and Canaanites, but not the Negroes. This nuance, not the Negroes, proves that the Negroes, Hebrew Israelites descended from Shem, are also of the black race, with the difference that they are not descendants of Ham. There is no controversy whatsoever. This royal line of the Hebrew Israelites was a black race. They are both the main actors and the writers of the Holy Bible. It is fascinating to note that the elites of the Hebrew Israelites married black women, thereby increasing the melanin content in their lineage. Indeed, Simeon, a son of Jacob, had married a Canaanite woman, Genesis 46:10. Judah, another son of Jacob, also married a Canaanite woman, Genesis 38:2. The patriarch Joseph married an Egyptian woman named Asenath, daughter of Potiphar, priest of On. Abraham also married an Egyptian woman who was the mother of Ishmael, his first son. Moses also married a black woman, a Cushite, the Ethiopian woman mentioned in Numbers 12:1. Eleazar, who replaced his father Aaron as high priest, married the daughter of Putiel, who bore him a son named Phinehas, which means black Negro or mouth of bronze, Exodus 6:25. Phinehas the Black later became the third high priest in the temple for 19 years. When Joshua sent spies to inspect Jericho, it was Rahab, a Canaanite prostitute, black by race, who hid the Israelite spies, Joshua 2:1. Rahab subsequently entered history in a royal manner. She married a Hebrew Israelite named Salmon, and from their union King David was born in the 5th generation. As it is written, Salmon begot Boaz from Rahab. Boaz begot Obed from Ruth. Obed begot Jesse. Jesse begot David, Matthew 1. 5-6. The Hittites. We cannot talk about black people in the Bible without mentioning the Hittites. Who are they? The name Hittite means sons of terror. They are descendants of hate. Their territory was vast and their army as powerful as that of the Pharaoh of Egypt. They were professional warriors with black skin whose territory was conquered by Joshua. According to the scriptures, your territory will extend from the desert to Lebanon, and from the great river the Euphrates, all the Hittite country, to the Mediterranean Sea in the west, Joshua 1:4. Centuries before the conquest of Canaan, Abraham had bought the cave of Machpelah from Ephron the Hittite to use as a burial place for Sarah, Genesis 23:10-20. After the conquest of Canaan, the Israelites lived among the Hittites and intermarried with them, Judges 3:5-6. Uriah the Hittite was a general in King David's army. His wife Bathsheba was black and very beautiful. King David fell in love with her. He had Uriah the Hittite killed and married his wife Bathsheba. From this union was born Solomon, a black prince, 2 Samuel 11:2-27. When he became king, Solomon also had Hittite women in his harem, 1 Kings 11:1. He married other black women, including a daughter of the Pharaoh of Egypt, 1 Kings 7:8. One of King Solomon's most beautiful love affairs was with a black woman who was the Queen of Sheba, with whom he had a son. This legendary figure, whose name is mentioned in the Gospel of Jesus Christ, Matthew 12:42 and Luke 11:31, was Makeda, Queen of Ethiopia, the Queen of the South. She had come to seek wisdom from King Solomon, but Jewish sources reveal that she left pregnant with King Solomon's child. She gave birth to a baby boy and named him Menelik I. This child became emperor of Ethiopia, and his reign marked the beginning of the Solomonic dynasty, which would last for 3,000 years. It was the longest dynasty in the world. It ended in 1970 following the fall of Emperor Haile Selassie, the Negus. When Emperor Menelik I came to Israel to visit his father, there was considerable confusion because no one in the royal court could tell Solomon apart from his son. They looked like twins. To put an end to this confusion, the notables demanded that he send his son back to Ethiopia. Menelik I and his mother, as well as his father King Solomon, were black. In light of this evidence, will you continue to say that there were no black people in the Bible? Your attention, please. Here is further supporting evidence confirming the presence of black people in the Bible, or certifying the black color of the children of the house of Israel. This evidence of the black origins of God's chosen people is so overwhelming that it silences all those who brazenly contest this thesis. It is clear and irrevocable evidence. The 31 black kingdoms of Canaan, from Mount Sinai to the Promised Land, the children of the house of Israel under the leadership of Moses and Joshua exterminated 31 kings of Canaan and destroyed their cities. According to Genesis 10:15-19, the inhabitants of these kingdoms, who included Canaanites, Amorites, Jebusites, and Hivites, were descendants of Ham and therefore black. Yes, all the descendants of Ham were black because the name Ham means black, charred, burnt. Here is a list of the kings of the land that Joshua and the Israelites conquered on the west side of the Jordan, from Baal-Gad in the valley of Lebanon to Mount Halak, which rises toward Seir. Joshua gave their lands as an inheritance to the tribes of Israel according to their tribal divisions. The lands included the hill country, the western foothills, the Arabah, the mountain slopes, the wilderness, and the Negev. These were the lands of the Hittites, Amorites, Canaanites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. Joshua 12:7-24. The black women of Jerusalem. In the Song of Solomon, the daughters of Jerusalem boasted of their sublime beauty, and especially of the darkness of their complexion. As it is written, "Dark am I, yet lovely, daughters of Jerusalem. Dark like the tents of Kedar, like the tent curtains of Solomon. Do not stare at me because I am dark, because I am darkened by the sun. My mother's sons were angry with me and made me take care of the vineyards. My own vineyard I had to neglect." Song of Solomon 1:5. Since the daughters of Jerusalem celebrated the darkness of their skin, can there be any better testimony to the Negroid character of their race? If your mother has black skin, can you claim to be white? King Solomon's wisdom was legendary. He was also a poet and had a refined taste for black women. He married countless black women in addition to the daughter of Pharaoh, Moabites, Ammonites, Sidonians, and Hittites. He had 700 princesses as wives and 300 concubines, 1 Kings 11, 1-3. Could he have been white and composed poems celebrating the beauty of black women? Jerusalem is Canaan. The Canaanites were black-skinned, and so was Solomon. The royal court and all of Jerusalem were a black community. Here is embarrassing visual evidence for supremacists proving that the girls of Jerusalem were black. These images are taken from a film shot in Jerusalem in 1925 during a circus performance, long before the arrival of white Jews or Khazar Jews who occupied Jerusalem and whitened the population. You can see that at the time, Jerusalem was occupied by a mosaic of peoples such as white and Muslim conquerors, but also and above all by an indigenous population that was predominantly Negroid. Since the Israelite Hebrews from Pharaonic Egypt were shepherds, we see them driving their cattle through the holy city. The most striking detail in these images is the ethnography. Notice the complexion and charm of the girls of Jerusalem at the time. They were beautiful and dark-skinned as the Bible so aptly describes. Reference: North Africa and Jerusalem. 1925, original color in HD. The Book of the Prophet Zephaniah. The prophet Zephaniah and King Hezekiah were black according to their identity explicitly revealed in the Holy Bible. As it is written, the word of the Lord that came to Zephaniah son of Cushi, the son of Gedaliah, the son of Amariah, the son of Hezekiah, during the reign of Josiah son of Ammon, king of Judah. Zephaniah 1:1. The term son of Cushi means son of the black man. In Hebrew or Greek, the word Cush means black. The revelation of Zephaniah 3, the African sesame, the biblical and indisputable evidence certifying that Africans are Hebrew Israelites is recorded in Zephaniah 3:10. In this brief passage, the Creator God Himself specifies that His children, the Hebrew Israelites scattered throughout Africa, will bring Him offerings, as it is written, from beyond the rivers of Cush. My worshippers, my scattered people, will bring me offerings. Zephaniah 3:10. Cush is the biblical name for the great kingdom that encompassed Ethiopia and Sudan. The reference point for this prophecy is Jerusalem, where it was written, when a celestial projection is made from the sky above Jerusalem and extends beyond the rivers of Cush. This expression specifically refers to the African continent. Here is a map of Africa dating from 1588, drawn by the European cartographer Livio Sanudo. In its central and southern part it is written in Latin, Judeorum terra, meaning the land of the Jews. This map clearly indicates the presence of black Jews in the heart of Africa since 1588. These are the children of the house of Israel, who fled Israel in 70 AD after the destruction of the Temple of Jerusalem. This period marked the end of Judaism and the dispersion of the Hebrew Israelites throughout Africa. The prophets Elisha and Jonah were black. In 1 Kings 17:9, the widow who gave the prophet Elijah her last cake during the terrible famine was a black woman, a Cushite descendant of Ham, and a resident of the region of Sharepta in Sidon. The widow's son later died, but the prophet prayed to God, and the child came back to life. According to Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus, known as Rabbi Eliezer Haggadol, the widow's son was none other than the intrepid Jonah, the future prophet who would stay in the belly of the fish for 3 days and 3 nights. Reference: from Wikipedia, the Free Encyclopedia. Raising of the son of the widow of Zarephath. The widow and her son Jonah, as well as the prophet Elijah the Tishbite, were black people, those starved by war. The Book of Lamentations, written by the prophet Jeremiah, describes the capture, ruin, and destruction of Jerusalem, and the misery of the exiles following the invasion of their country by the enemy. In the streets, the people of Jerusalem were dying of hunger and thirst. When a white person dies of hunger and thirst, their skin color never turns black. Yet in this passage, the appearance of the hungry was black, which explains that they were black people. We read, "Their visage is blacker than a coal. They are not known in the streets. Their skin cleaveth to their bones. It is withered. It is become like a stick." Lamentations 4:8. Here is another dazzling piece of evidence. We read, "Our skin was black like an oven because of the terrible famine." Lamentations 5:10. King James. The Book of Jeremiah. The prophet Jeremiah states that the people of Jerusalem are black and gloomy. We read, "Judah mourneth, and the gates thereof languish. They are black unto the ground, and the cry of Jerusalem is gone up." Jeremiah 14:2. Bible Gateway. In the King James Version, the prophet Jeremiah repeats and emphasizes, "I am black." We read, "For the hurt of the daughter of my people am I hurt. I am black. Astonishment hath taken hold on me." Jeremiah 8:21. The Book of Psalms. The psalmist gives us another example. We read, "Though I am like a wineskin in the smoke, I do not forget your decrees." Psalm 119:83. The phrase wineskin in the smoke describes a feeling of being dry, withered and worn out by hardship, like an ancient leather wineskin exposed to the constant smoke of a dwelling, becoming shriveled and blackened. Despite this profound exhaustion and feeling of uselessness, the psalmist maintains unwavering commitment to God's commandments. What does a smoky wineskin look like? In the context under study, it refers to people of African origin who describe their skin pigmentation as black due to prolonged exposure to stress factors. The wounds of the patriarch Job. The skin of a white person does not turn black when infected, even when dead. Their skin does not turn black. Readers of the Bible are familiar with the sufferings of Job, who was an Ethiopian Jew and therefore a black man, Beta Israel. He specifies the color of his black skin, which was falling apart. In this passage, the Bible describes the individual's skin symptoms, namely skin pigmentation and skin tissue loss accompanied by bone pain, a burning sensation, and skin dryness. We read, "My skin is black upon me, and my bones are burned with heat." Job 30:30. As you probably know, when a black person undergoes intensive training in the military or in sports, or when he goes through a period of great suffering, his skin becomes even darker. Naturally, the phenomenal suffering that Job went through had darkened his skin even more. We read, "I go about blackened, but not by the sun. I stand up in the assembly and cry for help." Job 30:28. A great black administrator in the royal palace of Judah. At the time when Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, burned Jerusalem during the reign of King Zedekiah, the Bible mentions the presence in the royal court of Judah of a high-ranking black official from Ethiopia named Ebed-Melech, an official attached to the royal palace. Jeremiah 38:7. The prophet Enoch was black. We have shown that the first inhabitants of the earth were all black. White people appeared on earth only a few thousand years ago. The prophet Enoch, who was of the 7th generation after Adam, was undoubtedly black. A scribe of righteousness, greater than Abraham, holier than Moses. Enoch lived 365 years before being taken up to heaven by God, as it is written, "Enoch walked faithfully with God, then he was no more because God took him away." Genesis 5:24. 3 human beings ascended to heaven, body and soul. Enoch was the first, the prophet Elijah the second, and the Lord Jesus Christ the third. They were all black. Enoch was a black man, patriarch, prophet, and spiritual leader of the world before the flood. The physical appearance of Moses, Joseph, and the Apostle Paul. As archaeology and biblical genealogy demonstrate, it's no longer a secret that the Egyptians were black-skinned. Indeed, they are descendants of Ham, and Hamites are black. As a result, the Pharaoh of Egypt and his family were black. Remember that pharaohs married their sisters to preserve the purity of their race. It was one of the Pharaoh's sisters who pulled Moses, the future prophet, from the waters. If Moses was a white man, how could he pass himself off as the son of Pharaoh's sister? The Egyptian pharaoh's obvious plan was that when he died, Moses should succeed him and sit on the throne. Moses was thus a charismatic man capable of raising Egypt to the heights of its glory. Imagine a powerful kingdom like pharaonic Egypt with a black king who before his death appointed a white man as his successor, one who was neither of his race nor of his family line. Such an assertion would be contrary to common sense. As an adult, Moses was forced to flee to the land of Midian. But the book of Jasher provides a vitally important detail about Moses' life. This book reveals that when he fled from Egypt to the land of Midian, Moses first settled in the land of Cush, the territory of present-day Sudan and Ethiopia, a vast African kingdom. On the death of the king of Cush, Moses was enthroned king and reigned for 40 years. At the age of 66, at the end of his reign over the kingdom of Cush, he headed for Midian to meet his God. The book of Jasher, chapters 72 to 76. If Moses was a Caucasian, how could he have reigned over this great African kingdom? Even today, with their unrivaled military power and advanced technology, no white person can be enthroned in an African country. Moses was therefore a black man according to the testimony of the book of Jasher. When he arrived, he defended the daughters of Jethro against shepherds who were abusing them. The daughters mistook Moses for an Egyptian simply because he was black. They reported to their father, and they said, "An Egyptian delivered us out of the hand of the shepherds, and also drew water enough for us and watered the flock." Exodus 2:19. Could Moses have been a white man? Let's see. The symbolic date that marked the beginning of the liberation of the Hebrew slaves was the day Moses met Yahweh Elohim at Horeb, on the mountain of God around the burning bush. On the instruction of the Lord God, Moses placed his hand on his side, and it became white as snow. It was leprosy. Subsequently, his skin returned to its natural color. Exodus 4:6-7. Moses' skin thus changed from its natural color to the white color of leprosy, before returning to normal. This transformation in the color of his skin leaves no doubt that Moses had black skin. If you believe that Moses was a white person, then tell me, how could the white color of his skin change from white to white, and then return to its original color? The case of Joseph. When Joseph's older brothers sold him out of jealousy, about 20 years later they saw him sitting on his throne as prime minister of Egypt. But they did not recognize him because he cleverly used an interpreter. Since he was as black as an Egyptian, they took him for an Egyptian. Genesis 42. Here we have fairly eloquent biblical proof that the very first Hebrew Israelites, Joseph and his brothers, during the lifetime of their father Israel, were black-skinned like the Egyptians. If the Apostle Paul was also mistaken for an Egyptian, it was because he was as black as an Egyptian. To defend his case, he sought permission from the commander of the Roman army. Paul addressed him in Greek, an official language of the initiated at the time. This Roman officer, a white man, was surprised to hear Paul speaking Greek. When they got to the barracks and were about to go in, Paul said to the captain, "Can I say something to you?" He answered, "Oh, I didn't know you spoke Greek. I thought you were the Egyptian who not long ago started a riot here, and then hid out in the desert with his 4,000 thugs." Paul said, "No, I'm a Jew, born in Tarsus, and I'm a citizen still of that influential city. I have a simple request. Let me speak to the crowd." Acts 21:37-39. According to the Roman officer's observation, the Apostle Paul was therefore black like an Egyptian. Jethro, the priest of Midian and Moses' father-in-law, was a black man. The Bible says the following: Jethro took with him Moses' wife Zipporah, who had been sent away, and Moses' 2 sons, one named Gershom and the other Eleazar. They brought them to Moses, who brought them into his tent. Moses' father-in-law suggested that he appoint leaders over Israel, leaders of thousands, hundreds, 50s, and tens to help Moses in his task. Moses obeyed his father-in-law's recommendations, which brought great benefit to Israel and rest to Moses. Exodus 18. Jethro, the priest of Midian, was the religious leader of the Midianite people. The Midianites were descendants of Abraham. which made them Semites, but they were not Israelites. Since Jethro was a Semite, he was naturally a person of color. Therefore his daughter Zipporah, Moses' wife, was not a Hebrew Israelite, but only a dark-skinned Semite. It is important to note that Moses later married a second wife who was also black. She was an Ethiopian, a Cushite. This new marriage earned Moses criticism from his brothers, according to what is written. Miriam and Aaron began to talk against Moses because of his Cushite wife, for he had married an Ethiopian woman. Numbers 12:1. Simon of Cyrene was black. Cyrene was an African coastal city on the Mediterranean Sea, not far from Egypt. Simon of Cyrene, who helped Christ carry his cross, was the father of Alexander and Rufus. These two sons established a church in Jerusalem. Simon of Cyrene and his children were not Israelites but black Africans. While Christ was carrying his cross and trudging toward the place of the skull to be put to death, the Jews had already purified themselves to eat the Passover meal and could not touch a wounded person condemned to death. It was therefore necessary to find a stranger, a non-Jew, to help carry Christ's cross, which explains why Simon of Cyrene was chosen. Mark 15:21. At the dawn of Christianity, non-Israelite foreigners converted to the new religion. For example, an angel of God instructed Philip to go and meet an Ethiopian eunuch, black-skinned, and bring him the gospel. Then the Holy Spirit commanded Philip to baptize him. Acts 8:26-38. As you have probably noticed, the Bible is full of black people. Have you also noticed the polygamous nature of the patriarchs of the Bible? It's like being in Africa. Abraham, Esau, Jacob, King David, King Solomon, etc. were all polygamists and fathers of many children. Habdan, son of Hillel of Pirathon, was leader in Israel for 8 years. He had 40 sons and 30 grandsons. Judges 12:13-14. Gideon had 70 sons because he had several wives. Judges 8:30. Apart from the Mormons in the U.S. who have adopted polygamy, it would be difficult to find white polygamists with many children, as was the case with the patriarchs of the Bible. An independent investigator tasked with defining the ethnic origin of such a family, that of the patriarchs of the Bible, would have no alternative but to conclude that it was the prototype of a 21st century African family. Samson the judge and Ezekiel the prophet were black. The black color of these two characters is justified by the nature of their hair, as they wore dreadlocks. Like the hair of Rastafarians, dreadlocks only work for black people and people of mixed race. We know that Delilah betrayed Samson by cutting his long hair. The prophet Ezekiel also wore dreadlocks like Samson, according to what is written. He stretched out the form of a hand and took me by a lock of my hair. And the Spirit lifted me up between earth and heaven, and brought me in visions of God to Jerusalem, to the door of the north gate of the inner court, where the seat of the image of jealousy was, which provokes to jealousy. Ezekiel 8:3. Thompson Bible. The Jewish diaspora was Negroid. In 1 Peter 3:3 we read, "Your beauty should not come from outward adornment, such as elaborate hairstyles and the wearing of gold jewelry or fine clothes." In this letter addressed to the people of God scattered throughout Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, and Bithynia, we have material proof that the Jewish diaspora was a black people because the repetitive braiding of hair, the wearing of jewelry, and the multicolored clothing mentioned are the prerogative of black women. Moreover, almost all the children of the house of Jacob wore dreadlocks. In this image we clearly see Pharaoh Ramses seizing 3 Israelite teenagers, Hebrew slaves, by their locks. The 12 tribes of Israel were all black. Before a detailed analysis of the parental links implicitly revealing the Negroid origins of the children of the nation of Israel, please note the following. The patriarch Abraham, who was the father of the covenant, was black. He married his half-sister. Genesis 22. His son Isaac married his aunt's daughter. Jacob, the son of Isaac, in turn married his 3 nieces. In summary, the trio of patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, preserved and strengthened the purity of their black race by marrying close relatives. This abundance of melanin was passed down through the 12 tribes of Israel. Their descendants were undoubtedly black people of Negro African origin. To put an end to the controversy over the Negroid origins of the children of the house of Israel, it suffices to demonstrate that Jacob's 12 tribes were all black. This is what we will attempt to do in a few lines. The Bible says the following. Abraham became the father of Isaac, and Isaac was 40 years old when he married Rebekah, daughter of Bethuel the Aramean from Paddan Aram, and sister of Laban the Aramean. Genesis 25, 19-20. What is an Aramean? Here is what the Bible reveals about the origin of the Arameans. We read, the sons of Shem, Elam, Asher, Arphaxad, Lud and Aram. Genesis 10:22. The Arameans are therefore the descendants of Aram, who is the fifth son of Shem. The Arameans are therefore Semites. Indeed, Aram is considered the eponymous ancestor of the Arameans in the Hebrew Bible. According to the Vocabulary Point Come dictionary, the Arameans belong to a group of Semitic peoples who inhabited Aram and parts of Mesopotamia between the 11th and 8th centuries BC. Being Semites, the Arameans were therefore black people. It is interesting to note that Laban was an Aramean, and by definition, a dark-skinned person. Based on this fact, logic suggests that his 3 daughters, Leah, Rachel, and Bilhah, who were Jacob's wives, were also black like their father, Rebekah. Jacob's mother was also the sister of Laban of Bethuel the Aramean of Paddan Aram. She was therefore Aramean and black-skinned. In conclusion, the patriarch Jacob, his mother, his father-in-law, and his 3 wives were all black. Based on this, the assertion that Jacob's 12 sons were black is unambiguous. The tribes of Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, and Benjamin. The members of these 7 tribes were black. They were descended from Semites. We have shown above that the Semites were black. Indeed, these 7 tribes were descended from the marriage between the Semite Jacob and 2 Semitic women, Leah and Rachel. These 2 women were the daughters of Laban the Aramean. The dictionary defines the Arameans as a Semitic people who inhabited Aram and parts of Mesopotamia between the 11th and 8th centuries BC. So you will not find anyone with skin as dark as the members of these 7 tribes. Kings David, Solomon, and Hezekiah. The prophets Zephaniah son of Cushi and Daniel were from the tribe of Judah. Moses was from the tribe of Levi. The prophet Jeremiah, Saul the first king of Israel, and the apostle Paul were from the tribe of Benjamin. All of them were therefore black. Let's talk a little about King David. It was with a sling that the young shepherd David defeated Goliath the giant. The sling is a primitive weapon used by Africans. It is still in use today. There is therefore no dispute about King David's Negroid origins. But when the prophet Samuel was called to anoint him with oil, the Bible tells us that David was blond according to what is written. Isaiah sent for him. Now he was blond with beautiful eyes and a handsome face. The Lord said to Samuel, "Rise up, anoint him, for this is the one." Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the midst of his brothers. The Spirit of the Lord came upon David from that day forward. Samuel rose up and went to Ramah. 1 Samuel 16:12. In this chapter of the prophet Samuel, the translators of the Bible have produced several versions of David's complexion. Here are the different translations. We read, he had a healthy complexion, attractive eyes, and a handsome appearance. Reference Bible Hub. He was glowing with health and had a fine appearance and handsome features. Bible Gateway. He was dark and handsome with beautiful eyes. Bible NLT. Now he was ruddy and withal of a beautiful countenance and goodly to look to. King James. Etc. In summary, the prevailing opinion is that David had a red or blonde complexion depending on the translator. As you know, there are Africans who are so light-skinned that they could be mistaken for mixed race. This is especially noticeable among African women. King David was either light-skinned or perhaps an albino like his grandfather Enoch, who was the first albino of the black race. According to the testimony of the book of the prophet Enoch, we read, "Listen, O my father, and know that my son Lamech has just had a son, Noah, who does not resemble him at all, and who does not appear to belong to the human race. He is whiter than snow, redder than a rose. His hair is whiter than wool, and his eyes shine like the sun. When he opens them, he fills the house with light." The book of the prophet Enoch, chapter 105, verse 10. This information has certainly caught your attention. This scene takes place before the flood. At that time, all the inhabitants of the earth were black, as suggested by Methuselah's testimony about the complexion of his grandson Noah. Thus, having white skin meant not belonging to the human race. Let us discuss Jesus of Nazareth, who is the Lion of the tribe of Judah. Regarding the census during which Jesus Christ was born, the Bible states the following. "So Joseph also went up from the town of Nazareth in Galilee to Judea, to Bethlehem, the town of David, because he belonged to the house and line of David." Luke 2:4. Like King David, Joseph belonged to the tribe of Judah, and therefore had dark skin. His wife Mary, who was his niece, also belonged to the tribe of Judah, and was also Negroid. Therefore, Jesus of Nazareth, the untamed lion of the tribe of Judah, was undoubtedly black. The two half-tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh. They were born from the union between a Semite, the patriarch Joseph, and an Egyptian woman named Asenath, daughter of Potiphar, priest of On. The Egyptians are descended from Mitzrayim, who is a son of Ham. Ham had very dark skin. The Semites were also black, since their mother was a Hamite and their father a Semite. The descendants of these two half-tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh were undoubtedly black, Negro-African. Samuel the prophet and Gideon, who was a judge in Israel, as well as the famous Joshua, who led the people of Israel into Canaan, were all from the tribe of Ephraim, and were therefore black. Deborah was black. It is rare to find female characters in the Bible who were prophetesses and liberators of the people of Israel. Deborah is one of them, the only female judge, prophet and poet in Israel for 40 years. She was also from the tribe of Ephraim. We read, "Now Deborah, a prophet, the wife of Lapidoth, was leading Israel at that time. She held court under the palm of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim. And the Israelites went up to her to have their disputes decided." Judges 4:4-5. Since her grandmother was Egyptian, Deborah had dark skin. The tribes of Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. These four tribes descended from the maidservants of Jacob's two wives. Each of Jacob's wives had a maidservant named Bilhah and Zilpah. They also bore sons to Jacob. The sons of Bilhah, Rachel's maidservant, were Dan and Naphtali. The sons of Zilpah, Leah's servant, were Gad and Asher. Jacob was a Semite. Therefore he had dark skin. When these children were born, Jacob was not a wealthy prince. He was a servant who tended Laban's sheep for a wage that he still had not received. Similarly, Jacob's wives who had dark skin were not wealthy princesses, and their maidservants Bilhah and Zilpah were even less so. So could Jacob and his two wives afford the luxury of hiring white women for domestic work? Wikipedia Free Encyclopedia says that Zilpah, Leah's servant, was presumed to be a slave. Have you ever seen a white-skinned slave? Also, the Bible tells us that Bilhah, Rachel's servant, was another daughter of Laban the Aramean, Genesis 29:29. The two maidservants of Jacob's wives, Bilhah and Zilpah, were black like their mistresses, and therefore their children, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher, and their descendants were black. The names Bilhah and Zilpah remain African names to this day regardless of country or religion. Samson, who was a judge in Israel, was from the tribe of Dan. He was black, as you have just seen. Whether in the biblical genealogy of the Old or New Testament, there is a clear indication of a large presence of black people. The presence of Europeans was insignificant in the Bible. It is only in the introductory part of the New Testament that we note their presence as an occupying force. Indeed, the Roman army which dominated the world had extended its dominance over Palestine. Figures such as King Herod, an Edomite Jew in the pay of Rome, and Pontius Pilate, the Roman procurator who condemned Jesus Christ to death, appeared. It should also be noted that later, Dr. Luke was the only white writer of an epistle of the gospel. The Lord God had formally forbidden the Semites, the Hebrew Israelites, from intermarrying with the Hamites, Deuteronomy 7:3. After this comprehensive study, it is clear that not only did the Hebrew Israelites marry the Hamites, but they also literally merged with them to form a single people, which is the black people of Africa and elsewhere. Ancient iconography confirms that the Hebrew Israelites were black. As you have so rightly pointed out, the Bible explicitly shows that Noah's two sons, Shem and Ham, as well as their descendants, were black. From Shem were born the Hebrew Israelites, God's chosen people. This irrefutable thesis is confirmed by ancient iconography, which allows us to see through ancient figurative representations that Israel was indeed Negroid. Yes, all the children of the house of Israel were black. This means that Jesus Christ, his mother, and his 12 apostles were black. A claim that, if true, challenges traditional Christian beliefs about Jesus' race and identity. Here are two pieces of iconographic evidence dating back 2 millennia, which are quite simply the most remarkable ever found. During the violent persecutions suffered by the early Christians, they were forced to take refuge in the catacombs of Rome, which offered them a safe haven. There they left indelible marks that are the first images of Jesus Christ. These early witnesses to the life of Jesus caricatured a black-skinned Jesus Christ. In fact, all images and icons of Jesus Christ depicted a person of color. It was during the Renaissance, under the aegis of Pope Alexander VI and the famous artist Michelangelo, that icons of a white Jesus with blue eyes appeared for the first time in the history of Christianity. This was an act of counterfeiting and falsification that continues today in films. The Bible says the following: "There is nothing concealed that will not be disclosed, or hidden that will not be made known." Luke 12:2. In fact, on March 25, 2024, Vladimir Putin, President of Russia, opened a safe containing Christian icons that had been locked away for 1,500 years and transferred them to Moscow Cathedral. The Russians discovered that these images of Jesus, his apostles, and his mother depicted black people. This is irrefutable proof that Jesus and his mother were black. Vladimir Putin is a believer, as he is often seen making the sign of the cross in church. He is therefore a Christian, and better still, an Orthodox Catholic whose church is very attached to icons. The paradox is that he is Caucasian. Yet it was this great statesman who announced to the world his discovery of the Negroid origins of Jesus Christ. Isn't that what the great evangelist Billy Graham said in Chicago in 1971? There is no longer any doubt. Jesus, his mother, his apostles, and all the Israelites are black. But who is this white Jesus with blue eyes and blonde hair falling to his shoulders? He is probably Krishna or some solar deity from Babylon. Who is this white Virgin Mary with blue eyes? She is Cybele, Queen of Heaven, Mother Goddess, and principal deity of Rome on Vatican Hill before the Christian era. She was fraudulently introduced into Christianity under the name Mother of God. Now that all the lies have been exposed in these end times, what will you do with these false images of Jesus and Mary that you have worshipped all your life? It is the same white Jesus and the same white Mary who appear in the dreams and apparitions of Christians, who are photographed and who are the idols of our churches. Do you see how the devil has succeeded in deceiving the world through false religion? There is no longer any doubt. All 12 tribes of Israel were composed of black people, and the biblical evidence is before your eyes. We are therefore led to ask ourselves, who then are these white Jews of the state of Israel? According to the Jewish Encyclopedia, they originated in Turkey and settled in the vicinity of Ukraine before populating Europe and the United States. They were known as the Khazar people. It was in the 8th century, during the reign of Bulan, king of the Khazars, that they converted to Judaism. That is why they are called Khazar Jews. They are neither Jews by blood nor Hebrew Israelites. It is like a white person converting to Islam. He would certainly be a Muslim, but he is neither Arab nor Saudi. During World War II, many of them perished in the Holocaust. Thus, in 1947, the UN Security Council allowed them to settle in Jerusalem following a resolution. This is how the occupation of Palestine and the whitewashing of the population of the nation of Israel began. These white Jews are therefore not the children of the house of Israel, God's chosen people. They are therefore not the heirs of the promise. Rather, they are Khazars from Europe, and here is some information about the nationality of the elites of the Hebrew state. Theodor Herzl is the founding father of the idea of creating the State of Israel. His real name is Tivadar Magyar, and he is of Hungarian origin. David Ben-Gurion is the founder of the State of Israel and a former minister. His real name is David Gruen, and he is of Polish origin. Shimon Peres is a former president of the State of Israel. His real name is Simon Persky, and he is of Belarusian origin. Yitzhak Rabin, former prime minister, is actually called Yitzhak Rabitsov, and is of Ukrainian origin. Moshe Dayan, former Minister of Defense, is actually named Moshe Kategorovsky and is of Ukrainian origin. The Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, whose real name is Mili Koski-Benshin, is Polish. Golda Meirson was the former Prime Minister of the State of Israel. Her real name is Mabovich, and she is of Ukrainian origin. Ariel Sharon is a former Prime Minister of Israel. His real name is Ariel Scheidman, and he is of Belarusian origin, etc. In the next video, we will confirm their European origin by providing irrefutable genetic evidence that will leave no room for doubt. In summary, what we need to remember is that Shem was Noah's first son. He was black. His descendants were also black. Genealogy of Ham, who was the second son of Noah. What is the meaning of Ham? According to Wikipedia, the Free Encyclopedia Etymology. Since the 17th century, a number of suggestions have been made that relate the name Ham to a Hebrew word for burnt, black or hot, to the Egyptian word servant or majesty or Egypt. According to Online Etymology Dictionary, 1854, the word Ham means a descendant of biblical Ham, used in reference to Egyptian and other peoples of North and Northeast Africa, but popularly, a black African, a Negro. The name eventually came to be associated with warm and hot, and hence the South also with an Egyptian word meaning black. End of quote. Ham was therefore black of skin, and the biblical ancestor of the blacks. Biblically speaking, the Egyptians were also described as Hamites, and as such were a black-skinned people, as it is written. Israel also came into Egypt, and Jacob sojourned in the land of Ham. Psalms 105:23. Incidentally, we have a moral obligation to digress, in order to correct and firmly refute a false and misleading public saying that has been in vogue for centuries. This saying claims that the Chamites, or all black people on the planet, were cursed by Noah, which would explain why Africa is in such a bad state. In fact, slave traders and white supremacists will argue that the patriarch Noah condemned Ham to perpetual slavery, thereby legitimizing their barbarism towards black people during the slave trade. But the truth is that Ham was never cursed. Rather, it was his son Canaan who was cursed, as it is written. Then Noah declared, "Cursed be Canaan. The lowest of slaves will he be to his brothers." Genesis 9:25. It is clear that it was Canaan who was cursed, not Ham. Noah curses his grandson Canaan, decreeing that he and his descendants will be a servant of servants to their brothers. This curse, which was also a prophecy, was fulfilled when the walls of Jericho were destroyed, as recounted in the book of Joshua. Thus the Canaanites became slaves to their brothers, the children of the house of Israel. Cursing the son instead of the father is a paradox that deserves an explanation for a better understanding of the Holy Scriptures. Indeed, it was Ham who revealed his father's scandal and nakedness. One may therefore wonder why the reproach that Ham should have suffered fell upon his son Canaan. This practice is an old tradition dating back to a period before the flood. It dictates that in the event of a curse the son inherits his father's reproach. This is what the patriarch Noah did. This ancient pre-flood tradition has been faithfully passed down from generation to generation. So that today, among the Bantu people who are the true Hebrew Israelites, the father is never cursed but rather his son. You can therefore see that the Africans were not cursed. It was rather the Canaanites who were cursed. The latter were also black. They were the Hittites, the Amorites, Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, whose territory corresponded to the entire territories of Lebanon, Palestine, Israel, Syria, and Jordan, a total of 31 kingdoms. This post-flood law applied by the patriarch Noah opens up a new perspective of knowledge, because in the Bible, children are also held responsible for the sins of their fathers up to the 4th generation. See Exodus 34:7. This detail allows us to see that the laws of Moses that govern the lives of Christians, namely the 10 Commandments of God, were also in force in the world that perished in the flood. Indeed, in the book of Jasher chapter 9 it is written that, at the age of 10 Abram went to Noah and Shem, stayed with them for 39 years, and received instruction in all the ways of the Lord. We have noticed that Abraham passed on these laws of the Lord to the 12 sons of Israel, who ratified them on Mount Sinai in the presence of Moses. We close the parenthesis. Consequently, Ham's 4 sons, Cush, Mizraim, Phut, and Canaan, and their many descendants should also be black-skinned. In short, we're dealing with families with a high melanin content. For the sake of argument, let's take a closer look at the legendary cities created by Ham's children and the identity of the peoples who lived there. Ham's sons were Cush, Mizraim, Phut, and Canaan. Given that Ham was black, these 3 sons and their offspring are also black-skinned. Cush was represented by Sudan and Ethiopia. Cush was named after the color of his black skin. In both Hebrew and Greek, the word Cush means black. Cush's descendants are called Cushites. Cush was the founder of Ethiopia and Sudan, ancient Nubia. His direct descendant was the founder of the historic city of Nineveh. These 3 vast empires had been home to black people since biblical times. King Nimrod, who ruled Babel, was a son of Cush and, like his father, a black man. Doesn't the Bible tell us about the Tower of Babel, whose summit touched the clouds? Doesn't it also tell us the captivating story of the prophet Jonah, who was swallowed by a whale and lived in its belly for 3 days and nights before being washed up on the beach? Jonah's preaching after this ordeal prevented the destruction of Nineveh. These Bible passages recount the adventures of the Cushites, the valiant black peoples of the Bible. The sons of Cush: Seba, Havilah, Sabta, Rama, and Sabtika. The sons of Rama: Sheba and Dedan. Cush was the father of Nimrod, who became a mighty warrior on the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. That is why it is said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. Genesis 10:7-9. Mizraim was the whole of Egypt and North Africa. Mizraim was the co-founder of Egypt, which became the leading military and economic power of its time. From him came the long line of pharaohs and their legendary stories. Egypt was black. Do you remember the endless wars between the Philistines and Samson? The beautiful but tragic love story between Samson and Delilah? The duel between the young shepherd David and the Philistine-backed Goliath? The Philistines came from Mizraim, and since they were descendants of Ham, they were black-skinned. The many black peoples descended from Mizraim are: Mizraim was the father of the Ludites, Anamites, Leabites, Naphtuhites, Pathrusites, Casluhites, from whom the Philistines came, and Caphtorites, Genesis 10:13-14. Put was represented in the same way: Libya, Arabia, the Great Lakes region, and southern Africa. Put was the founder of Libya, and its inhabitants are called Putites. Put lies between Egypt and Canaan, Genesis 10:6. Exclusively among the first patriarchs after Ham no sons or grandsons of Put are recorded in the Bible. But the book of Jasher 7:12 mentions the names of at least 4 of his sons, namely Jebel, Haden, Bina, and Adon. It has often been wrongly said that Africa has no history. Yet many biblical passages evoke the legendary memories of these fearsome black warriors. In a fragment of the Annals of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, the invasion of Egypt by Put is recorded. In Jeremiah 46:9 they are described as mighty men or fearsome warriors skilled in the manipulation of the shield. The people of Put are described as war professionals in the armies of Egypt and Persia, Jeremiah 46:9. Ezekiel 35:27-10. We read, Men of Persia, Lydia and Put served as soldiers in your army. They hung their shields and helmets on your walls, bringing you splendor, Ezekiel 27:10. Canaan was represented by Palestine, Israel, and the Near East. Canaan or Phoenicia corresponded to the territories of Lebanon, Palestine, Israel, Syria, and Jordan. Canaan is both the name of the country's founder and the name of the land itself. The inhabitants of Canaan are called Canaanites. It was this great land of Canaan that became Israel, the legendary promised land allocated to Abraham and his descendants for all time. At the beginning of the pre-Diluvian origins, the Bible specifies that Ham was the father of Canaan, Genesis 9:18-19. May they be descendants of Ham the Canaanites, as numerous as they were also a black people. The Phoenician name is another appellation, a Greek term also used to designate the Canaanites. According to the renowned British biologist and historian Gavin de Beer, the Phoenician name means a dark-skinned person. Canaan or Phoenicia was the first and most ancient civilization to flourish in the Jordan Valley. Canaan or Canaan means belonging to the Anu. Anu is the name of the black people from the Great Lakes and southern Africa who founded Egyptian civilization. Why is North Africa or the Greater Middle East, comprising the Maghreb, the Near East, and the Middle East, occupied by Arabs, the majority of whom are of mixed race? The Middle East was once called Canaan and corresponded to the territories of Lebanon, Palestine, Israel, Syria, and Jordan. In the past, these territories were exclusively populated by black people. But the intermingling of these peoples began in 33 BC, when Alexander the Great conquered the country. About 2,000 years later, the Romans invaded the Middle East. Islamic conquests then caused the migration of populations to the territories of the Greater Middle East. Thus Phoenicia and the Middle Eastern Maghreb, which were once populated by black people, disappeared over the centuries, leaving behind a mixed race. Population predominantly Arab Muslim, which denies its African origins. Nevertheless, comparative DNA studies show that today's Lebanese have 90% of the DNA of ancient Canaanites. The other 7% comes from migrants from Europe. Indeed, from the point of view of skin pigmentation, the study of DNA from 3,700-year-old human skeletons exhumed in Sidon reveals that the first inhabitants of Canaan were dark-skinned. Reference: Genetic Study by Mark Haber and al. Published in 2017 in AJHG. In 1945, Mark Rodolphe Sauter, a Swiss anthropologist and professor of paleontology, counted and categorized 5,000-year-old skulls found during archaeological excavations in the Canaan region. Of 39 skulls found, "37 were dolichocephalic, black skulls. Curiously, none were brachycephalic, white skulls. This is the archaeological proof that the first inhabitants of Canaan were Negroid. On the other hand, when skulls from a period close to our own generation were studied, around 2,500 years ago, 92 skulls were still dolichocephalic, but 17 were brachycephalic, corresponding to the period of interbreeding with white Eurasians. Reference: Brachycephalic races of the Near East. From origins to the present day. So much scientific evidence to support the assertion that in early times, North Africa and Phoenicia were exclusively populated by blacks who laid the foundations of modern civilization. Note: it is important to point out that the Prophet Muhammad, who founded Islam, was also a black person, as his mother was a black Cushite from Abyssinia in Ethiopia. In addition to the Canaanites who populated North Africa and intermarried with European conquerors, there are also Semites who are Hebrews, descendants of Ishmael, the first son of the patriarch Abraham. Also, thanks to interactions between peoples, there are many Hebrew Israelites, children of the house of Jacob, among them. Indeed, genetic studies reveal that 13% of Palestinians have Hebrew Israelite DNA. Reference: CRI Genetic Cellular Research Institute. In summary, we have just proven that after the flood, Ham, who was Noah's second son, and his descendants were also black. Genealogy of Japheth, Noah's third son. Japheth and his many offspring were also dark-skinned. To demonstrate this, we'll go outside the Bible and use archaeological and scientific facts to back up our thesis. Given that the whole earth was occupied by blacks only, we also have a duty to point out the period and mechanisms that brought about the appearance of whites on earth. What does the Bible say about Japhet? We read, the sons of Japheth, Gomer and Magog and Madai and Javan and Tubal and Meshach, and Tiras, and the sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz and Riphath and Togarmah, and the sons of Javan, Elisha and Tarshish, Kittim and Dodanim. By these were the isles of the Gentiles divided in their lands, every one after his tongue, after their families, in their nations. Genesis 10:2-5. Apart from this brief indication from Genesis 10, the Bible has kept a near total and mysterious silence on Japheth, his 8 sons, and their offspring. While the Bible praises the conquests of the children of Sem and Ham and their brilliant civilization, no biblical reference specifies the cities created by Japheth's progeny. No comment on the children of Meshech, Tubal, Madai, Tiras, and Turk, and there are very few annotations on the conquests of their offspring. This mysterious biblical silence presages a rejection, an exclusion of Japheth from the positive history of the Bible. It was Joseph Flavius, a great Jewish historian of antiquity, who in his book, The Antiquity of the Jew, informs us that Japhet and his 8 sons founded Asia and Europe. The first Europeans were therefore blacks. You'll notice that they didn't stay in Canaan, so they didn't take an active part in Old Testament history. It was the Apostle Paul who later brought the gospel of Jesus Christ to Asia Minor and Europe. This last detail forces us to open a parenthesis in order to give you a concise reading of the history of Christianity. This will enable you to better discern the contours of today's theme, as it will show the omnipresence of blacks from the genesis of Christianity to the present day, as well as the late and harmful arrival of whites in Christianity. We understand that this digression may be tedious, and we apologize for taking up your time. According to Genesis 10:5, the Bible specifies that Japheth's descendants, Europeans and Asians, are the Gentiles. It is to them that Christ's gospel of salvation was destined. It was the blacks, Hebrew Israelites freshly converted to the new religion of Christ Jesus, who evangelized European and Asian countries through the Apostle Paul. Indeed, Paul's epistles to the Romans, Corinthians, Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, and Thessalonians were nothing other than letters addressed to the European and Asian churches founded by the Apostle Paul. After Pentecost, Christianity was well established in Africa. In addition to Christ's black apostles, the founding fathers of the first Christian churches were also Africans. Examples include Tertullian of Carthage, 155 to 240 AD. Origen of Alexandria in Egypt, 184 to 254 AD. Athanasius of Alexandria in Egypt, 296 to 373 AD. The Coptic Orthodox Church of Alexandria was founded in 42 AD by Mark the Evangelist and was the largest Christian church in the Middle East. It is estimated that 10% of the Egyptian population belonged to this church. The church tradition teaches that in 333 AD, evangelists Matthew and Bartholomew began 3 months of preaching in Ethiopia and converted the country to Christianity. In 341 AD, under the reign of Emperor Izana, Ethiopia made Christianity the sole religion of the empire. Blacks such as Niger and Lucius were the first Bible teachers in Antioch, where for the first time in history, believers in Jesus Christ were given the name Christians. As you can see, it is indisputably clear that Christianity was the religion of Africans from its very beginnings. It was not Europeans who exported Christianity to Africa, but rather the opposite. Christianity was well established in Africa from its very beginnings. It wasn't until 325 AD that the Europeans made their official entry into Christianity, but it was a detrimental entry, as they completely distorted Christianity, bringing with them paganism, war, and division. In fact, in 325 AD, Constantine the Great, Emperor of Rome, brought together all the Christian bishops at the Council of Nicaea to make Christianity the universal religion of the Roman Empire. His sole aim was to consolidate his reign and reunite the immense empire of Rome, which was beginning to splinter. Seeing that Christianity was the dominant religious entity, he made it the mainstay of his political ambition. So as not to frustrate the various religious sensibilities in vogue, he took care to preserve them by integrating them into the new structure. Thus ancient paganism, Gnosticism, Zoroastrianism, Mithraism, Babylonian, and Egyptian religions, etc., were clothed in a Christian mantle and merged into a grand whole where everyone could find something to their liking. This religious syncretism came to be known as the Catholicos or Catholic Church. In Greek, Catholicos means universal. Thus was born the Universal Catholic Church or Mother Church, into which all religions were merged, with the far-reaching consequences we see today. But after the Council of Nicaea, Constantine led the Church of Jesus Christ into the trap of politicizing Christianity. To begin with, he had gradually taken control of Christianity, having himself convened and presided over the Council of Nicaea. Constantine eventually proclaimed himself God's servant and representative on earth, and thus placed himself at the head of the church. He was Caesar, an emperor of Rome who assumed the papal office in an unacknowledged way. This was known as Caesaropapism. This laid the foundations for the papacy, in which military, political, and religious power came together in the hands of a single man, the Pope. From this point onwards, Christianity was wrongly considered a European religion. Of course, the truth is quite different. It's important to emphasize that the Caesaropapists introduced paganism from Rome into the Christian church, provoking protests and wars that resulted in the fragmentation of the church. Even though the Caesaropapists killed more than 50 million people, the majority of them Protestants, during the Holy Inquisition and the Holy Wars, they never succeeded in reunifying the Church of Jesus Christ, which they paganized, profaned, and dislocated. This explains the fractionalism in Christianity today, with its various offshoots such as Catholics, Protestants, Pentecostals, Baptists, Adventists, Orthodox, Lutherans, and so on. But what exactly is this paganism and these profanations that have provoked protests, schisms, wars, and even the dislocation of the church? You can watch videos 8 to 20 to learn more about this subject. As this topic is not the main focus of this video, we will only mention a few little-known or overlooked cases in order to shed some additional light on the matter. These include the imposition of the cross of damnation as a symbol of Christianity, paganized baptism by sprinkling, the veiled practice of necromancy, and pagan idolatry with a Christian appearance, all of which caused the ruin of souls. Here is a summary of the dilemma. Before the battle that enabled him to defeat General Maxentius and become Emperor of Rome, Constantine the Great is said to have seen this sign in the sun and to have been told to fight under this banner, the PX. His soldiers then printed this logo on their flag and won the victory. In order to promote the cross, Vatican strategists who are Satanists falsified historical facts. They subtly erased the PX symbol that Constantine had seen and replaced it with a pagan cross as shown in these images. Yet it is proven that Jesus Christ died on a simple torture stake and not on a cross. Originally, the cross was a Babylonian symbol opposed to Christianity. The Bible states that anyone hung on a tree is cursed. Galatians 3:13. Any tree on which someone has perished is also an object of curse. Almighty God turned his back on his Son when he saw him on the cross. Matthew 27:46. The Jews refused to touch Jesus' cross because it is an object of curse that defiles souls. Kalinsky wrote in his book entitled Vaticinia Observationibus Illustrata. The Jews hated more than anything else the wood on which someone had perished. That is why they covered it with soil. Page 342. But what do we see today? These crosses of Babylon, which are objects of curse, have invaded the Christian people. The crosses are worshipped and carried in procession. It is incredible because the cross has become the emblematic symbol of Christianity. This is an extremely serious matter. You may not know this, but it is an insult to Christianity because the cross has never been a Christian symbol. It is a desecration of our religion. There is no doubt that the cross eloquently embodies Christ's sacrifice for humanity. But because of its nature, the cross and the person crucified on it are objects of curse. This is why Christ's apostles never displayed crosses in their churches. However, it should be mentioned that crosses originate from Babylonian tradition. Cursed artifacts that contributed to the paganization of biblical Christianity. A comprehensive analysis of the symbolism of the cross is provided in video number 21. In addition to the cross, other elements of ancient paganism have been incorporated into Christianity. For example, baptism by sprinkling. True baptism consists of immersing the person in water as Jesus Christ, his apostles, and the early Christians did. In Greek, the word baptism comes from the verb baptizein or baptizo, which means to dip, to immerse, or to plunge something. This immersion in water is the central rite of the sacrament, symbolizing death to sin and resurrection to new life in Christ, the person thus being immersed in the death and resurrection of Christ. This gesture brings salvation to the soul. But the Vatican chose baptism by sprinkling, which is an Egyptian practice, practiced 3,000 years before Jesus Christ. This baptism was intended solely to purify the body and spirit in ancient Egypt. This baptism does not save the soul. It is another feat of the Satanists who infiltrated the Church of Jesus Christ. You will also notice through these images that Egyptian magic has subtly taken root in Catholicism. This is what communion and the levitating host are all about. The worship of the Holy Sacrament is nothing more than the ancient cult of the sun god Mithras in Babylonian paganism. Necromancy, which is forbidden in the Bible, is practiced there through the invocation of souls in purgatory, masses for the dead, and the veneration of relics and incorruptible bodies. The Bible prohibits idolatry. However, this prohibition is violated through the veneration of crosses, statues, icons, and the Blessed Sacrament. Consult encyclopedias and serious historians. You will learn that the Catholic Church was created in 325 at the Council of Nicaea under the aegis of Emperor Constantine the Great. But the Catholic Church and its followers have another version of history. They claim that their church is the only one to have been created by Jesus Christ in the year 33, and that the Apostle Peter was appointed the first pope by Christ himself when he declared, "And I tell you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it." Matthew 16:18. This version of history is clearly erroneous, which classifies it as historical falsification. But I will confound you by proving that you are wrong. If your version of history is true, then explain to me, why do the words Catholic or Pope not appear in the Bible? Jesus and his apostles never uttered these words and knew nothing of their existence. The names of the churches founded by Jesus and his apostles are mentioned in the Bible. Indeed, the Apostle Paul, during his missionary journeys, founded churches in Europe and Asia. These are the churches of Rome, Corinth, Galatia, Ephesus, Philippi, Colossae, and Thessalonica. Also, in the book of Revelation chapters 2 and 3, the Lord Jesus himself listed 7 major Christian churches, and we see that an angel is assigned to each of them. He judges each of them, giving advice and warnings. Here are the names of the 7 Christian churches recognized by Jesus Christ: the Church of Ephesus, the Church of Smyrna, the Church of Pergamum, the Church of Thyatira, the Church of Sardis, the Church of Philadelphia, and the Church of Laodicea. As you can see, Christ praises 7 Christian churches and their heavenly messengers, but at no point does he mention the Catholic community and its pontiffs, because this type of organization was not yet in place at that time, as we are led to believe. The Catholic Church under the influence of the Caesaro-Papist would not be created until centuries after Peter's death. It is interesting to note that in the early church, Peter did not exercise absolute authority over the apostles and Christians, contrary to what the Church of Rome claims. We rightly see the Apostle Paul publicly rebuking him for his hypocrisy towards new converts, Galatians 2:11-14. Could he have been Pope and been rebuked in this way? Moreover, at the First Council of Apostles in Jerusalem around the year 50, which is recounted in Acts 15, it was the Apostle James, the brother of Jesus, who presided over the council, not Peter. You know that the total number of popes is around 267. Of these 267 popes, 247 are European, including 208 Italians and 112 Romans. These are official figures from the Vatican. But why are there so many Europeans, and especially Italians, on the throne of Peter? Throughout this video, we have demonstrated with supporting evidence that Jesus, his mother, and his apostles were black. Peter was one of Christ's apostles. He was Hebrew. He was an Israelite and black-skinned. He was born in Israel. He was neither white nor Italian nor Roman nor European. He was never Pope. Does this so-called photo of Peter on your fanciful list of popes show a black person according to his biological origins? This is where your lie is exposed. Peter was never Pope. Jesus never sat him on a throne or placed a crown on his head. Moreover, the papacy had nothing to do with Christianity. Historical documents that have not been altered by the Vatican attest that the papacy was purely a dynastic affair, ruled by the noble and very wealthy families of Europe. Each family presented a delegate who bore the title of cardinal, and the cardinals met to elect their king. This had nothing to do with Christianity. That is why there were popes who were enthroned while still teenagers, others who were atheists, pedophiles, Satanists, sorcerers, usurpers, cannibals, etc. They crossed paths with Christianity throughout their history and took it hostage. Throughout its history, we have seen 3 popes on the so-called throne of St. Peter, fighting and excommunicating each other, thus proving their political and military origins, but not their Christian ones. Videos 10 and 11 offer a detailed study of the papacy. Most popes were not Christian, which raises the question of the legitimacy of their power and moral authority. They imposed Roman paganism on Christians under the guise of church tradition. As might be expected, Catholic monks and nuns protested. They chose to follow a religion built on the Word of God, not one established by politics and weapons. 18 million of them were branded as Protestants and burned alive. It is estimated that 45 to 50 million Christians perished in this militarized Christianity for alleged heresy and in atrocious conditions, with the confiscation of their property, etc. We therefore affirm that the Catholic Church, born at the Council of Nicaea under the banner of popes and emperors, was no longer a Christian church, because the popes and emperors, through their actions and decisions, diverted this institution from its very essence, turning it into an instrument of political and religious domination, causing the loss of souls. This is a brief summary of how the church was paganized and dislocated by Europeans. You will find a complete study of this phenomenon in videos 8 to 20. When pre-colonial literature claimed that Europeans brought Christianity to Africa, you see that this was another falsification of history. Rather, we should be talking about the return of Christianity to Africa. In fact, in 70 AD, after the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem, the Hebrew Israelites dispersed throughout Africa, taking with them Judaism and the rudiments of primitive Christianity. About 2 millennia passed, during which time the name of the God of the Bible was known and worshipped in Africa. When in 1880 Europeans landed in Africa for colonization, documents of the time certify that the Africans worshipped a god called Tata Zambi or Yahweh. But the slave trade, by devastating the African population, also wiped out its civilization and culture, including Christianity and Judaism, which flourished among the Hebrew Israelites. In short, the entire history of Christianity as it is told to us is nothing but a historical falsification. The true history of Christianity remains to be written. The fact is that all the empires that emerged on earth after the flood, from Babylon to pharaonic Egypt, reached their peak and then disappeared except for Rome. Historians often mention the secret date of the fall of the Roman Empire. In truth, the Roman Empire never fell. Thanks to the complicity of emperors Constantine the Great and Odoacer, Rome survived and underwent a profound metamorphosis to become the all-powerful Catholic Church we know today. Do you find it hard to believe me? The Vatican is a state within another state, a kingdom within another kingdom. This policy of integrated or confederated kingdoms has been replicated in every country in the world through religion. Thus, the Vatican has established vassal kings, known as cardinals, in every country in the world. It was Rome that founded the Catholic churches in almost every country on the planet. It is Rome that holds the power, and the popes appoint the cardinals, who are kings in each country. These cardinals in turn appoint the bishops, who are the prefects of Rome. The bishops appoint the parish priests, who are the subprefects. And these bishops ordain the priests, who are the sacrificers of the Roman gods. Thus Rome has survived and expanded its kingdom. It has extended its hegemony over the entire earth. When the Pope visits his kingdom spread across the globe, his 1.4 billion Catholic followers come out to welcome their king. Rome has accomplished this feat by mixing political religion and war. Observe the clothing of the Catholic episcopate, their hats and their attire. They are the same as those of European royalty and Rome in particular. Jesus Christ, his apostles, and the first bishops of the church did not wear such clothing. Isn't the liturgy in Catholicism in Latin? That is the mark of Rome. Everything is centralized in Rome, and every year the money collected in the diocese is sent there. What happens there has nothing to do with Christianity. Rather, it is the imperialism of ancient Rome that is in vogue throughout the world, but cloaked in a Christian mantle. Ask the Catholic episcopate, from cardinals to parish priests, and you will see that they have been trained to govern, to sign contracts on behalf of the Vatican State, so that biblical teaching, which leads to the salvation of souls through fidelity to the Word of God, is largely neglected. This church is not Christian but imperial. This is what I call the Church of the Emperors of Rome. The portrait of their Jesus is sometimes that of Cesare Borgia, the son of Pope Alexander VI, or a sun god of Rome. Their Virgin Mary is Julia Farnese, the Pope's mistress, and is often Cybele, the main deity of ancient Rome. These are the images that all Catholics worship. Catholicism is a desecration of biblical Christianity, and this sacrilege is a unique feat achieved by the Satanists of the Vatican. Indeed, the honorary president of the Association of Catholic Exorcists, Father Don Amorfi, claimed that all the cardinals belong to a satanic lodge within the Vatican itself. Reference: June 30th, 2001, Italian newspaper Tronchermo. Comments collected by journalist Stefano Maria Paci. Do you have any idea what a church run by Satanists is like? It is time to come out of ignorance. That is why it is important to conduct thorough research. We close the parenthesis. Given that this video focuses on the blacks of the Bible, Japheth's lineage, which migrated from Africa to Europe and Asia, needs our attention because, according to contemporary scientists, it is this lineage that will mutate to give rise to the white race. The map of origins. Non-biblical but consistent sources have precisely mapped the territories once occupied by Japheth and his descendants. Gomer and his sons populated France, Switzerland, the Celts, and Galatians. Gomer's son Ashkenaz populated Germany. Magog's offspring populated Poland, Hungary, Romania, the Crimea, part of Russia, the Ukraine, and the Scythians. Meshech and his progeny populated the Georgia territories of Armenia and Turkey. Tarshish descendants populated the United Kingdom. The children of Javan occupied parts of Great Britain and Greece. Tubal, Armenia, Italy, Portugal, Spain, and Iberia. Madai, Medes and Persian Kurds. Tiras, France and Spain. Hittite, Greece. Dodenim, Serbia. Riphath, Paphlagonia and the Celts. Togarma, the Caucasus Mountains. Elisha, Belgium, Germany, and the Netherlands. Kittim, Larnaca, small town on the island of Cyprus in the Mediterranean south of Turkey. Rhodonites, the island of Rhodes. The first British man, Cheddar Man, 10,000 years old, was black-skinned. Thanks to the work of contemporary scientists, we have confirmation of the biblical account that it was the children of Japheth who left Canaan in the Middle East who populated Europe and Asia, and above all that their skin was black. Yes, the descendants of Japheth, Noah's third son, were black. In fact, in 1903, British geneticists discovered an ancient well-preserved skeleton in a cave in Cheddar, George, Somerset, England, which they studied in depth. In 2018, researchers at the Natural History Museum in London succeeded in creating a reconstruction of the person in question. This first British man, who lived around 10,000 years ago, reveals some surprising features. The man had black skin, black curly hair, and blue eyes. These discoveries were made thanks to a combination of factors, such as the high quality of the DNA collected and the new genome sequencing techniques developed in recent years. Cheddar Man was part of a hunter-gatherer population which migrated from the Middle East to Northern Europe after the end of the last ice age. Reference: France Infoculture, February 7, 2018. The origins of the white race according to scientists. Throughout the scriptures we have demonstrated that Noah's three sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, were black. Given that they were the ones who repopulate the earth after the flood, the evidence that the whole earth was populated exclusively by blacks is unambiguous. So what is the origin of the whites, reds, and yellows? Only science can provide an adequate answer to this delicate question. There is an anachronism between the dating of the Bible and that of science concerning the appearance of the first men on earth. While the biblical Adam was created by God 6,000 years ago, the scientific Adam would have appeared between 120,000 and 200,000 years ago. The only thing that science and the Bible have in common on this subject is that both Adams appeared in Africa before populating the entire planet. Indeed, the oldest human fossils were found only in Africa, making the dark continent the cradle of humanity. Australopithecus lucy in Ethiopia was 3.2 million years old. Ardi in Tanzania 4.4 million years old. Oran in Kenya 5.9 million years old. Tumahi in Chad was 7 million years old, and the list goes on. There were more than 12 branches of the human species: Australopithec, Homo habilis, Homo erectus, Homo sapiens sapiens, Denisovans, etc. Anthropologists reveal that there are three predominant human species that have evolved on Earth. The first was Homo sapiens, which originated in Africa and became modern man. Then there were the Neanderthals, two different specimens from Europe, Germany, and Siberia, who lived in caves. These last two Neanderthal specimens are now extinct. The last species is the Yamnaya, which originated in Asia and populated Europe. Genes from both species can be found in Caucasians. The aim of one study was to find out whether Neanderthal genes exist in modern humans. This task was taken on by Svante Pääbo, a Swiss geneticist and founder of paleogenetics, a discipline specializing in the study of early humans and ancient populations. In 1997, his team succeeded in sequencing mitochondria, mtDNA, from a Neanderthal specimen found in a cave in Germany's Neanderthal Valley. The results were spectacular. Yes, 5 to 7% of Neanderthal DNA can be found in all Caucasians, white Europeans, and Asians, but none in Africans. When modern humans, the Africans, Homo sapiens, arrived in Eurasia around 44,000 to 54,000 years ago, they found Neanderthal specimens and mingled with them to form a hybrid race, the white or Caucasian race. Geneticists concluded, Europeans are Neanderthals while Africans are the real pure human Homo sapiens. Reference on YouTube. Europeans are Neanderthals. Africans are the real pure humans. Other scientists, for their part, have declared that white skin is a discoloration, a depigmentation of the original black color, a consequence of the temperate climate, but also of hybridization with the Neanderthal. Here are the latest scientific findings on the two races. They are of the utmost importance because, notwithstanding the fantasies of white racists, they reveal on a microscopic scale the profound differences between blacks and whites and the supremacy of the black man. Date of mutation from black to white. A scientific hypothesis. Researchers at Harvard University have pinpointed the date of the skin depigmentation process that whitened the skin of these black Homo sapiens, who migrated from Africa to Europe. They explain that this depigmentation took place gradually 8,000 years ago, as it was only then that whites were found in Europe. In mitochondrial terms, the difference between a black man and a white man is due to two genes found only in white-skinned people. These are SLC24A5 and SLC45A2. These genes are responsible for skin depigmentation. Anyone with these two genes is white, and anyone without them is black. The Harvard researchers had in their possession fossils from different parts of Europe. By sequencing the DNA of these fossils, they discovered that fossils dating back 8,500 years did not have these two genes. The Europeans of the time were therefore blacks. On the other hand, fossils dating back 7,700 years had both genes. The researchers concluded that depigmentation from black to white occurred between 8,500 and 7,700 years ago. The two types of melanin. Advantages and disadvantages. Apart from the genes, SLC24A5 and SLC45A2, that differentiate whites from blacks, melanin is also responsible for human skin coloration. In fact, there are two types of melanin, that of black Africans known as eumelanin, and that of whites known as pheomelanin. Pheomelanin means bad melanin because the prefix pheo comes from the Greek and means bad. Melanin in black people has fantastic properties. In fact, melanin in black people, eumelanin, protects the skin against UV rays from the sun as well as nuclear radiation. It absorbs all types of energy such as light, electromagnetic waves, sounds that the human ear cannot hear, telephone waves, radio waves, radar, computer radiation, X-rays, cosmic rays, ultraviolet rays, microwaves, etc., and transforms it all into energy for the body. Melanin appears to be a magical panacea injected into the bodies of Africans. It is found in the hair, eyes, skin, blood, and bones, and gives their bodies great strength, muscles of steel, and astonishing flexibility. This is why black people are strong and hold the best records in dance and sports competitions. Melanin acts as a natural antioxidant, in the sense that it helps protect skin cells from damage caused by free radicals and skin aging. It also has a spiritual function. In fact, melanin and melatonin are both linked to the pineal gland. Melanin is not directly produced by the pineal gland, but it is influenced by it, particularly in the context of skin pigmentation and light absorption. Melatonin is synthesized and released by the pineal gland. The pineal gland was commonly referred to as the third eye for many reasons, including its location in the center of the brain, and its connection to light via the circadian rhythm and melatonin secretion. Many spiritual traditions believe that it serves as a link between the physical and spiritual worlds. René Descartes, a 17th century philosopher, mathematician, and scientist, argued that rational thought was the necessary and sufficient condition of the soul, and that the pineal gland was its seat. It has also been proven that melanin and the pineal gland constitute a kind of antenna that connects black people to the divine. This is why black people are very spiritual and fill churches and mosques. The latest scientific discovery about the properties of melanin is both fascinating and dazzling. It concerns the brilliant discovery of Dr. Arthros Solis Herrera. This scientist has demonstrated that melanin in black people not only has the ability to produce water, but also the ability to dissect water molecules to produce oxygen through a photosynthetic process exactly like that of plants. Yes, you heard right. The bodies of black people produce oxygen, a substance essential to life thanks to the melanin they contain. We read, the concept of photosynthesis, building something using light energy, is currently only applied to the plant kingdom. However, melanin's intrinsic property of splitting and reforming water molecules breaks this paradigm. During a study on the 3 main causes of blindness initiated in Mexico in 1990, Dr. Solis Herrera discovered the previously unknown ability of melanin to form water molecules. Herrera discovered the previously unknown ability of the melanin molecule to absorb photonic energy and dissipate it in a unique way by splitting the water molecule. The very first step of life in plants and humans is virtually the same: the dissociation of the water molecule. Reference: The Human Photosynthesis by Arturo Solis Herrera, November 29, 2017. Here is another mind-blowing piece of information about melanin in black people. It is worth its weight in gold. Synthetic melanin is fake melanin produced in laboratories. Hold on to your hats, because even though it is fake, it costs 15 times more than gold. Today in September 2025, a gram of gold costs 90 euros, while a gram of synthetic melanin costs 1,390 euros according to Servolab. This is beyond comprehension, and you understand that melanoderms, or people of the black race, carry within them an immense treasure more precious than refined gold. But why is such information kept hidden? And why has it been decided not to communicate it? Well, the leading geneticists are unanimously white, and the global press, including scientific journals, is owned by leucoderms, people who do not have melanin. This is not just my personal opinion, nor is it an analysis lacking credible scientific evidence. Far from it. The evidence is there right before your eyes, and you can see it for yourself. It is a source of pride and elevation to have black skin. Skin that beyond aesthetic considerations represents a symbol of resilience and pride. It is therefore a monumental mistake, the result of abysmal ignorance that drives African women to depigment their skin. Ladies, it is crucial to rejoice in the biological heritage that is ours as individuals of the black race. Another function of melanin. Let us note in passing the restorative power of nature thanks to melanin. After the Chernobyl nuclear disaster in Russia on April 26, 1986, approximately 4,000 people had perished and all life had been destroyed in the region. That is when melanin appeared coming from nowhere. It absorbed all the nuclear radiation and cleaned up the environment, allowing life to reappear. An abundance of wildlife and lush vegetation emerged from the chaos. When the Russians sent a robot equipped with a camera into the core of the nuclear reactor, they discovered colonies of melanin covering the walls of the tank. Similarly, the Fukushima nuclear accident on March 11, 2011, was caused by a tsunami triggered by a magnitude 9 earthquake, which raised a 30-meter high wave and spread up to 10 kilometers inland, killing more than 18,000 people by drowning. The wave reached a height of 15 meters at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant, which spilled highly radioactive water into the sea. Videos showed that the seawater was tinged with a dirty black color. This was melanin, which had appeared instantly and had begun its process of cleaning up the contaminated seawater. As you can see, black people's melanin, or eumelanin, has divine powers that pheomelanin does not possess. Be proud of your black skin. What does science say about pheomelanin? Black melanin, eumelanin, protects the skin from the sun's UV rays as well as from nuclear radiation. On the other hand, according to a scientific review entitled, "How Does Phenomelanin Synthesis Contribute to Melanomagenes?" and according to the U.S. National Institutes of Health, white melanin or pheomelanin is bad because it causes cancer. It's an unprotective and potentially carcinogenic pigment, which is why they have trouble tanning. Reference: Cosmetology Masculine by Marie-Claude M. Pages 217 and 218. In scientific circles, pheomelanin is considered an accident of nature. Reference: UVA, pheomelanin and the carcinogenes of melanoma. Pheomelanin is deadly, causing DNA damage that leads to skin cancer in leukoderms and threatens to wipe out the white race in the long term. An American paleontologist by the name of Peter D. Ward, a specialist in mass extinction, wrote, "Even if I predict it for thousands of years, it is skin cancer that will cause the disappearance of the white population." Together with other eminent scientists, they hypothesize that in the long run there will be only black people on Earth. The latest research undertaken by eminent American scientists, Boston University, Harvard Medical School, etc., was aimed at finding a way to blacken whites by modifying their molecular structure so that their bodies produce eumelanin. It's a quest for the survival of the white race. Become black or die of cancer. The research is conclusive. Dr. Kyung-Yin Yoon's team at Thomas Jefferson University in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, has confirmed the results of such an experiment. Through genetic manipulation, they turned albino mice black. The researchers found that this genetic correction was permanent and passed on to the offspring of the operated rodents. After a week's treatment, the skin of the red-headed mice produced eumelanin, turning their skin black. The exceptional African pangenome. The pangenome is the set of genes of a group of individuals in the same species. By studying the pangenomes of populations worldwide, some 15 American and European universities have made a staggering discovery about the DNA of Africans. The results of this work, published in 2018 and 2019, are available on the internet and also on Letters Nature Genetics. After studying the pangenome of a sub-Saharan African population, comparing this set of genes with humanity's reference genome, they discovered that the African pangenome contains 10% more DNA than humanity's reference genome. Black people therefore have 10% more genetic heritage in their blood than the rest of humanity. As you can see, this percentage of extra genes is enormous from a scientific point of view, and places blacks at the top of humanity. Source: National Library of Medicine, National Center for Biotechnology Information. Reference: Assembly of pangenome from deep sequencing of 910 human African descent. Confused and stunned by such discoveries, white supremacists will call these genes phantom genes. But eminent scientists and researchers will assert that these so-called phantom genes are in fact cosmic genes of the universe that will activate during the next evolution of humanity. This is therefore not ghost DNA, but divine DNA in humans. Be very proud to be African. The intelligence map of the world. This is the explosive discovery of several American and Asian universities. The DNA series number. The DNA series number equals the group's level of intelligence. University of Japan, University of China, Yale University of the USA, the headquarters of the American Association of Advancement of Science. They figured out that the more DNA series you have, the smarter and more humanly developed you are. So they started off studying animals. Orangutans had 3 DNA series. Gorillas had 4 DNA series. Chimpanzees had 5. Apes had 5. These guys tested 116 different human groups, then they put their findings on this map. They call it the intelligence map of the world. 6 was the magic number of DNA series for most groups, even Europeans. Europe or Asia or America have a 6 DNA series number. Africa has 9 DNA series number, concluding intellectual dominance, meaning they have the greatest possibility of genius. Reference: The DNA Intelligence Map of the World. Copyright 1996. Source: Global Patterns of Linkage Disequilibrium at the CD4 Locus and Modern Human Origins. The Mandarin Cave reveals the secrets of the latest archaeological and genetic discoveries about Homo sapiens. The Mandarin Cave is located near Montélimar, next to the small French town of Maliverne in the Drôme department. It is an archaeological site containing many well-preserved objects dating from the transition between the Middle Paleolithic and Upper Paleolithic periods. The oldest layer is 120,000 years old. This new discovery in the Mandarin Cave has overturned all European chronologies. It has enabled anthropologists and geneticists to conclude that Homo sapiens, black Africans, arrived in Europe not 45,000 years ago, but 54,000 years ago. At that time, the whole of Europe was populated exclusively by Homo sapiens, black people from Africa, over a long period of 50,000 years. Europe was therefore a continent of black people. After Homo sapiens had populated Europe for 50,000 years, another people appeared. This was a new race from Asia. They were white, giant in stature and robust. They were always armed with axes and various other weapons. They were filled with unprecedented violence. They were known as the Yamnaya. Upon arriving in Europe, they massacred the Homo sapiens men and procreated with the black women. As proof, a genetic study shows that their Y chromosomes multiplied while those of Homo sapiens decreased dramatically over the same period. This was the genocide of Africans by the Yamnaya. This is how Europe, a black continent for 50,000 years, began its interbreeding. Today, Europeans have 35% of the genes of the Yamnaya people. They are undoubtedly the descendants of the Yamnaya. And like their ancestors, they have faithfully continued the genocide of Africans on a global scale. Through slavery, the slave trade, colonialism, and modern science, they have decimated almost the entire population of the African continent. Indeed, the transatlantic slave trade is the largest forced movement of innocent people in history, spanning more than 400 years. UNESCO, United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, estimates that this trade uprooted 15 to 20 million Africans, who were kidnapped and forcibly taken to the Americas and the Caribbean by the descendants of the Yamnaya. The most important piece of information in this story is that almost all the slaves were Hebrew Israelites, the children of the house of Jacob. Indeed, the slave market was located in the heart of the kingdom of Judah, as these maps show. This genocide of black people continues today in various forms. Now that the world claims to be modern and civilized, it is important to do things with elegance. Under the pretext of fighting disease, Europeans have sterilized the majority of young African girls through mass vaccinations. Then they inoculated Africans with the HIV, AIDS, and Ebola viruses that are ravaging the black continent. The latest genocidal weapon is genetically modified mosquitoes. These mosquitoes are released en masse in Africa with the mission of subtly exterminating Africans. Arab and Muslim slavery. The very first mass genocide of Africans began in 652 and was ordered by Emir Abdullah ben Sira. This genocide lasted 1,400 years, or more than 120 human generations. Between the 8th and 20th centuries, Muslim conquerors carried out raids in Africa. They surrounded villages, pillaged all their riches, captured their inhabitants, and enslaved them. Approximately 17 million Africans were deported to the Arab world, of whom 3 million died. In the Arab Middle East, captured African women were used as sex slaves in arenas while all the men were raped. forced into hard labor, and had to undergo castration beforehand to prevent them from reproducing on Arab soil. Almost all of these men died as a result of this castration procedure. Reference: the Hadith say, Arabs are the best allies of white people, especially since they have been mixed with Europeans. It was the Arabs who told the Europeans where to find the Jews. That's how the depopulation of the Kingdom of Judah in Africa started. Today in the Arabian Peninsula, Europe, the Caribbean, and the United States, plans and plots to enslave and exterminate black people are carried out on a daily basis. Why do leucoderms commit such atrocities against melanoderms? Well, the new controversy proven by genetic evidence shows that unlike Africans, DNA analysis of the Yamnaya reveals no ancestors. This discovery calls into question previous conclusions that the black skin of Homo sapiens mutated to give rise to white skin. For example, the remains of Tumahi in Chad were found to be 7 million years old, which testifies to long ancestral lines for black people. But nothing of the sort exists for the Yamnaya. They are believed to have appeared suddenly in Asia 8,000 years ago. The new controversy claims that they were created through genetic manipulation with the ultimate goal of destroying Homo sapiens. Great variety within the original race. It is among black people that we find a wide variety of skin, eye, and hair colors. Indeed, Africans vary in their degree of tanning, depending on their geographical position in relation to the equator. In Sudan, some black people even have bluish skin. There are also albinos, blacks with blonde hair, blue or green eyes, etc. To conclude this first issue of the Chain of Truth Restoration, we would like to say this. Despite the contempt and racial hatred to which it is subjected, Africa is indeed the cradle of humanity. Therefore, as we have demonstrated through the Holy Scriptures, the people of the covenant, God's chosen people, the chosen race, the children of the house of Israel, are found among the black people of Africa. Through the complicity of transatlantic trade, they were also deported to Europe, the United States, Latin America, the Caribbean, and elsewhere. In the next issue, thanks to the prowess of modern genetics, we will provide you with scientific and compelling evidence of the Negroid origins of God's chosen people. The time has come to restore the truth. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel, as there will be many more explosive videos to come. Please also consider sharing this publication, and click the like button to improve its search engine optimization. To you, black people of Africa and elsewhere, children of the house of Israel, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord look upon you with favor and give you peace. Amen.